안녕하세요. 어떻게 지내셨어요?
Thank you for inviting me. I've been doing okay.
지금 러시아 우크라이나 전쟁을 비롯해서 중동에서도 좀 전쟁이 다시 일어나고 있는데요. 종군 기자 출신으로서 어떻게 생각하시는지 궁금해요.
And as long as we don't address the fundamentals of humans in between themselves, as long as we don't erect international laws that we abide by, there are going to be movements, there are going to be new alliances. Things will keep changing, but things are changing and not for the good. So there's a lot of things happening and getting closer to us, and I think it shows the emergency to address fundamental questions of humans' relation.
그 2년 전에도 저희가 인터뷰를 할 수 있는 기회가 있었는데 유럽에서 피난민들을 받아들여서 이제 가정으로 데려가는 그런 모습들을 찍어주셨었는데요. 그러니까 그때 그 피난민들 지금 어떻게 되고 있는지 혹시 아시는지 궁금해요.
There is a lot of refugees and movements all around the world, not just in Europe, in regards of the conflict in Ukraine. I think it's good that some countries that are more peaceful can welcome refugees, but we should be able to welcome every refugee and not just one group of refugees. And I think today, sadly, we see in Europe a big shift in who is allowed to come and who is not allowed to come. And that shows that there might be two humans and two values. And that is something that we should all stand against. One human, one values, because then therefore, who's the good one and who's the bad one? I think we need to go back to this idea of equality and human rights. And if we are able to welcome a lot of refugees in Europe from Ukraine, we should be able to welcome a lot of refugees from other places in the world.
전장에서의 마지막 취재는 언제셨는지 궁금해요.
So the last conflict is the war in Ukraine. About 10 months ago and about 6 months ago, I did 2 long trips last year to produce a new project. It's really hard to access both sides. I would love to go on the Russian side and see how they work and how they think, but that access is completely closed. And even though I would manage an access on the Russian side, then the Ukrainian side would be closed to me from that point on.
더 이상 이제 직접 취재하는 것이 쉽지 않아졌다라고 언급을 하셨었는데요. 어떤 이유였는지도 궁금합니다.
Yes, indeed. It's been, when you cover conflict for a very, very long time, you need to wonder, find motivation, renew your motivation to go to a conflict. But eventually, it also takes a toll on your mental health, it takes a toll on your overall being. So wars leave you all the time with something in the future. And so you need to kind of think, am I willing to, not knowing exactly what it will be, but am I willing to carry that burden in the future?
그럼에도 불구하고 언론이 이런 분쟁을 다루는 게 중요하다고 생각하시는 이유는 뭘까요?
I think we need to know what's going on in the world, and journalists are part of that work of unearthing what is happening in the darkest place of this world. We can not only count on governments, we can not only count on spokesperson from army, because we're going to be, we're just going to be fooled.
분쟁 지역을 다루면 저희가 보통 한쪽 편에서 이제 다루게 되는데요. 양쪽을 모두 다뤘다라고 하시니까 다르게 보이는 게 있는지 궁금해요.
I think as much as we could, a journalist should go always on both sides. But as much as possible, going on two sides really offers an in-depth look on people's motivation for fighting, their minds, their reasoning also. So this conflict at present time in Gaza is not accessible from both sides at all. But there is one commonality, is in order to fight, in order to kill, you need to be able to dehumanize the other. I think accessing one side and then the other doesn't only show something about their own side, it also show how the other one is reflected, how the other one is presented, how the other one is dehumanized to some extent. What is remaining humanity in between two fighters who've been trained to kill each other? But when you can show that there is still a common humanity, this humanity will be served very well in the future if peace comes, because after dehumanization, you're going to have to go in the process of rehumanization in order to rebuild together.
최근에 다시 우크라이나에도 가셨다고 하는 거 보니까 다시 전쟁 취재를 하고 계신 모양입니다.
Yes, I did. but in a very different way. I wouldn't call myself a journalist today. So my idea as of today for my work is to leave a very literal, contextual storytelling. I've decided to become an artist because I want to be able to still work on the conflict and what is invisible at war, but yet I want to use my audience imagination. And therefore, my intention is by removing a number of information from my work and leaving a space for the imagination. I think it's a very interesting place for the audience because they're going to have to puzzle and put something where the blanks and the voids are, and they're going to need to use their own imagination. And I think there is a limit to what we can show. There is a limit to, at least as a storyteller, I feel that there is a limit to what I can show in order for people to understand what war are, what they imply, and what is the real cost of that. I think by changing the practice, by changing directions, as an artist, I am not cross-disciplinary, I'm not multidisciplinary, I like to call myself undisciplinary.
그 예술의 모습이 어떤 모습으로 표현됐는지 궁금해요.
But as an artist, I can do things I could not do as a journalist. I'm going to do a structure, a sculpture. I'm going to do an immersive piece. I'm going to use photography, projection image. This allows me to always show a different aspects of war. And it allows me to look from a different perspective and then reveal something that I could not do any other way, but by using a different methodology to do it.
분쟁 지역의 사진 기자로서 가장 좀 소중하게 여기는 사진이 있다면 어떤 건지 궁금해요.
It is always very delicate to identify a single pictures. This is in near Mitrovica in the north of the Kosovo province, 1999. There is this idea of a home and a couch burning and your own home being destroyed. But that can also be an allegory for the world in which we live. Looking at climate change, temperature rising, and comfort and contrasting in the way we see the future, what is necessary to meet the challenges, yet the point where we are today. So that photograph still very much resonates with the present day, and hoping that eventually it's not going to resonate at all for the future.
꼭 전쟁뿐만이 아니라 우리 마음속에 어떤 그 혐오나 적을 없애기 위해서는 어떻게 해야 된다고 생각하시는지 궁금합니다.
I think when we see a lot of philosophical, political thought of ideas differences with other people, we need to focus on what is common, what is still there that is common, a sense of identity, a sense of belongings, the sense of family, the sense of wanting to be together and transform a society, and that can only be done through different opinions, but also by finding compromise in between those opinions. And I think to start having compromise, we need to see what is common and what are the bridges that have never been removed in between people, and then start from the bridge and not start from the difference. And then from there, explain who we are, where we come from, and what is the way we ended up thinking the way we think. And then by presenting ideas, by opening up, not only it allows for the others to listen, but it allows also for us to hear what is on the other side, and hopefully in a much more peaceful and intelligible way.
SDF가 올해 20주년을 맞았는데요. 축하 메시지 좀 하나 보내주세요.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to SDF for those 20 years sharing knowledge, sharing talent, sharing good intention, trying to bring a bit of light and explanation to the world, bringing every year a set of speakers more impressive than the previous year.
미래를 위해서 이 화두 하나 정도는 우리가 지금부터 고민을 해야 된다라고 생각하시는 게 있다면 어떤 건지 하나 적어주시면 좋겠습니다.
Sure. Compassion.
Compassion.
But compassion originally means with the suffering, and from its Latin and Greek origin. And so what I want to say was this is we're gonna need to understand where others are, and we're gonna need to be able to feel with them in order to build the future. And if everyone starts, being more mindful with the people around ourselves, and then it's a way to build. It's a way to get closer. It's a way to imagine the future together. In the future, we'll need compassion. We're going to need compassion for nature. We're going to need compassion for other humans. We're going to need to approach existence with much more compassion than we do today.
이상으로 SDF 20년의 기록 미래를 본 사람들 카림 벤 칼리파 씨와 함께했습니다.
Thank you very much to you, and have a good afternoon.